Okay, everyone. It is now officially 7:30 Western time. The sun is just barely setting, and it's probably pitch dark where most of you guys are. Welcome to the third and final TreeStuff teleconference phone seminar. I'm not sure what we want to call it. I will be your host. My name is Nick Araya. For those of you that don't know me, I run a tree care company called TreeCareLA in Los Angeles. And let me see. We have a dozen people on staff. There's me. There are 3 people in the office, and then an 8-person crew out doing the work. We do a lot more than pruning and removals. We focus on providing consulting services, air spade work, doing vertical mulching and things like that, trunk injections, cabling, prop installation, pruning, and removal, obviously. And removals can be crane removals or little removals. We have 5 or 6, I'd have to count them all up, but 5 or 6 or more certified arborists on staff. It's kind of a weird group of people in the sense that there's a lot of power in here, a lot of arbor power, I guess we could call it. But TreeStuff has asked me to put together a 30-minute talk on what goes into pricing a job, and basically just talking about pricing. And so that's what we're going to do today. So I think, so right now I have it, so it is on mute right now where we can't hear your kids in the background or anything, and you guys can all hear me. If you press *6, if you want to chime in with a question, we'll do it like a little radio show here. I will see a little message on my side that pops up and says that somebody has a question, and then we can maybe get some more specific things. We might try just unmuting everyone and see how chaotic that gets at the very end, but this is the final one, so all bets are off at this point. Okay, so we're going to go for about half an hour, and I want to start by sharing a personal story / observation that I had. I've been in business for about 9 years now, and at some point around the end of the first year, my company was still very small. We didn't have a chipper yet, but we did have a chip truck. And most of the jobs that we were bidding were in the $500 to $1,500 price range. And I had the opportunity to bid at an HOA for a job that was about $5,000 or $6,000. And I remember doing that bid and submitting it, and then later that day, realizing that I wasn't nervous about putting in that $6,000 bid. And 6 months prior, had I been doing a job that a quote that big, I would have been really hesitant. Do we have the people power to do this job? Are we going? What kind of corners are we going to have to cut to make it all work? But I had developed enough in my company that I was at a $6,000 comfort level, and at that moment was when I had this realization or this observation that running a tree service is very much like playing a video game. When you start out, you have low capabilities, but you're not being asked to do that much. You don't go up against other people that are bidding on a $50,000 pruning opportunity. You're just running around the game, poking people with a stick, and that's fine. You can keep advancing. And over time, in the video game, you increase your capabilities, you get better equipment, and you have better experience to know what lurks behind every corner to know if you should proceed or not, or how you should proceed. What do you need in order to walk through this door? And that's what running any business is, really, but we're going to use tree businesses because that's what we all do. And so whether you're at a point right now where it's you and your pickup truck all by yourself, or a dozen people and multiple vehicles trying to do several $1,000s a day, no matter where you are, we're all playing the exact same game of looking at the tree that's in front of us and trying to come up with a price that doesn't exploit the client or shoot yourself in the foot. We're trying to find that balance in the middle. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I think a really good example, or a good place to start, is knowing your base cost. And I think almost every tree service, we start at the same spot where it's 2 people or 1 person and a helper, a pickup truck, maybe a dump trailer, maybe if we're lucky, and a chainsaw. And that's where I started. It was just me. I didn't even have a pickup truck. I was using my Honda Civic with a roof rack, and I would do little pruning jobs and put the brush on a tarp and then put the tarp on my roof rack. That was the beginning of my company. And when I got to the point where it was me and a helper, and we would rent a pickup truck from U-Haul, an F-150 U-Haul pickup truck, we knew that I wanted $200 for the day because I was making $150 at where I used to work. So I figured if I can make $200 in a day, and this other guy can make $200 in a day, and then we spend $100 for the truck rental, fuel, and any tools and stuff like that, I knew that we needed about $500 a day. And that was my beginning, the very beginning of the company. That was my beginning base price for 2 people, a pickup truck. And that was my first formula. I could go out and do sales and look at, whatever, a little guava tree in the backyard and 2 orange trees. And I knew if I could sell that, if we could get it done for one day, I could sell it for $500 and we'd be good. And as my company developed, I realized, within the first couple months, like, wow, we're paying our bills, but we're not actually making any money. And we don't have anything to invest with into the company. And so I realized I have to increase my base pay. And at that time, I started looking at $600 or $700 a day. What can we do to make that $700 a day? So I still have $200. The other guy working with me is still making $200. We can pay for the truck rental, the fuel, and we have money left over that I could save up to buy a better chainsaw, or rent bigger trucks, or rent a chipper on the days that we needed it, whatever it was. And that was the moment in my mind that I switched from being a tree guy to being a business owner. When I realized that in order for the company to remain strong and to grow, I had to factor in profit and investment money into the pricing that I was giving. That's where this whole realization happens of how to get to where I wanted my company to be. So that base price, no matter what size you are, there's a number. For me, it's several $1,000s a day right now at my company that I need to pay for all of our insurance and pay the rent at our shop, to pay for 3 people in the office, to pay my paycheck, and to pay for all the crew out there that are doing the work. We need several $1,000s a day, and I can use that base price as I'm out there looking at things. If I see like, oh my God, they got 10 trees here, but honestly, I've got 6 climbers, and they can each do a tree and a half. So doing 10, we can definitely get that done in a day. So no big deal. So I don't even need to know what the price is per tree. I could, in the consultation with the client, tell them, look, it's going to be $5,000 for today, for these, and we'll get it done in one day. And then they can make an instant judgment if it's worth it for them or not. So I would call that gut pricing because I'm not really looking tree by tree by tree. I'm not running any math or anything like that. I just know what my base price is, and I know, how close to that base price I want to get on this particular job, and I give them the number, and we'll see if the client takes it. However, a base price in my mind should be for basic services. So if you're pruning a Norway maple in the backyard, you are just doing a little bit of deadwooding and then maybe getting it off the building and some light thinning perhaps, crown cleaning. So you'll do that for $600 a day. But what if the same two-person crew with a pickup truck is selling a job removing 3-inch diameter deadwood that's over the house? It requires rigging. And so you look at it and go, well, it's still going to be the two of us we'll get it done in one day. And so that should be $600. But the reality is $600 is your base price, but you're now offering a premium service that not everyone can do. The clients hired you, or hopefully are hiring you, because they have faith that you can keep their house safe and not screw things up. They see that you have insurance, which other people don't have, and it's fair for you to charge $800 or $1,000, even though you can get it done in the same amount of time. We're not just selling man hours, we're also selling premium services, we're selling confidence, and we're also selling, I think a good way to think of it is longevity. We want those customers to know that when you call me 2 years from now because you notice another giant dead piece, I'm going to be able to come and do it because I'm still going to be in business because I'm not just running a fly-by-night operation here. So if you're doing premium services, at our company, the air spade is a really good example. There's really like 3 air spades in all of Los Angeles. And so I know the likelihood of a client that needs the air spade to come out, of them like getting someone to find a bid for half my price, it's not going to happen. It's just mathematically, it's nearly impossible. So I can bid those jobs really, really strong. And on the one hand, you could say, well, that's not fair to them just because you're doing a job. If it only takes 2 guys 2 hours and your man-hour rate is $80, how can you justify charging $1,500 for that job? And the answer is it's not exploitation because A, we're being very upfront, open, and honest with the prices. B, we've built this company to be able to confidently execute extremely complex things that other people just can't handle. I own a $20,000 air compressor that goes along with the air spade. That air compressor has to get paid for. Or if I don't own one, I'm renting it from the rental shop downtown, and you've got to pay for the rental fees. You've got to pay for your employees to drive down there and deal with the nuisance of filling out the paperwork and putting fuel in it and all that. And all these things have cost built into it. And a lot of tree services in LA know about air spades, but they don't want to get involved with buying the air spade, learning how to use it, learning how to do the cleanup and protecting the property and getting the air compressor. So they don't want that money. So if I don't bid for that, if I just bid it, 2 guys for 2 hours on site, $400, I'm leaving a lot on the table. So don't do that. Don't leave the money out on the table if it's money that you deserve and that you can acquire fairly. Now, obviously, we can all just use scare tactics and lie to people, and I've seen people sell removals on dead trees that they knew were actually just dormant, but they wanted to sell the job, so they told the client it was dead and dangerous. Obviously, that's exploitation, and no matter what price you tell someone, that's taking advantage of them. Even if you're upfront, you're not being honest. Okay, so once you know your base price, whether it's $600, $1,000, or $10,000 a day, the next thing I think you should look at is what we'll call the closing rate. What percentage of your jobs are you actually, what percentage of your quotes that you send out are you actually getting those jobs? And the obvious example is if you're getting 90 to 100% of every quote that you put out, you're pricing everything way too low. You don't need to be a genius to figure that one out. But when you start looking in the middle, that's where things can get a little muddy of like, do I want to be at 30%? Do I want to be at 75%? It's somewhere in there. I know for my company, I know these numbers very well, but I also know that if I tell you my number, it's going to sound really weird. We're somewhere around 75%. However, we don't. People that know me and know my company, we don't do free estimates. So, and we do 1-hour consultations. So right up front, people are paying money to talk to me or one of our arborists. And 2, we're spending an hour and a half with them. So we're really building a stronger relationship with the client, but that comes at a cost. I can't go to 12 different properties in one day if I'm spending an hour plus driving to them and taking the time to write up the quote and all that kind of stuff. So I'm seeing like 4 per day. So if you're doing 10 or 15 a day and you're selling 3 of those jobs, I'm doing 4 per day and I'm selling 3 of those jobs. You're driving more than I am maybe, but we're both spending the same amount of effort, energy, and time selling. So for my company, I know what the numbers are. For you guys, one of the metrics that you can use is first you got to figure out what that number is. Track it for a month or look at your last 30 quotes or whatever and add up how many you actually got. And then, run the math and find out where you are. And then from that point, start playing with the numbers. If you're doing $2,400 a day, that comes out in jobs, in revenue. You're doing $2,400 a day and you're selling 50% of your quotes, then I know that you're bidding $4,800 a day because 50% of 4,800 is 2,400. So that's kind of your base ratio. You're bidding at 4,800 a day, and you're getting half of that. 48, 50%, 50% of 48. That's your beginning ratio. And if you add up your total quotes per day and put it on a little spreadsheet, eventually you're going to notice that number is going up or down. And the moment it starts going up, when you become aware of it, you can push it to go up. You can add 5% onto jobs here or there, or maybe it's because the days are getting longer, so you're able to fit in 1 or 3 more visits each day. And all of a sudden, you're not bidding $4,800 a day anymore. Now you're bidding $5,400 or $6,000 a day. That excess on top of the $4,800, that's your playing opportunity right there. These are quotes that you don't need to send out to still get your base $2,400 a day, because you're doing 50%, and now you're exceeding that. So those last 2 visits per day, try to sell those jobs for a higher cost and watch what happens. And a lot of times you find out bumping the numbers up 20% doesn't make a difference in the rate of jobs that you're closing. When you're doing really big jobs, if you're a contractor that does $100,000 remodels, people definitely feel and notice an extra $20,000 on the bill. But when you're doing $800 pruning jobs, adding another $150 is not, for most people, it's not always the thing that's going to make or break it. They're more concerned about who's doing the job, How are they doing it? Are they going to screw up my property? Are they going to screw up my tree? And if you can make them happy in all of those regards, you get to reap an extra 150 per day to keep them really happy with the end result. Some people, you just have to give them the bottom dollar price, and in my mind, I don't want to jump towards those people, working for those people. But so if you track what your closing rate is and how the total value of quotes per day, and you look at those numbers, when you start putting this on a spreadsheet, which is not hard to do. I mean, you can put it in a handwritten notebook too if that's better for you, but I really think you should put it on spreadsheets because that gets you towards this other world of tracking more and more things and using that information to make decisions on how to manage your company. So anyways, you experiment on those jobs. Maybe it's the ones that are further from your service area, or it's trees that you don't like a particular species of tree. Just add a little penalty onto it and say, look, if you want me to come and prune your Bradford pear, I'll do it. It's going to cost $100 extra. You don't have to tell them that, but why is the cherry tree $250 and the Bradford pear is $350? And you can tell them that to do these right, you need to be a better arborist. It's not just a matter of cutting 10 feet off the top. They've got structural issues that require more knowledge work on whatever, to explain it to them. So let's go on. And remember, if you have questions, if you want to chime in, *6 will open it up. We have a dozen or so people listening right now, which is kind of cool. Once you start looking at these numbers, it allows you to confirm your gut pricing. And we know what gut pricing is. When you walk in the backyard and you see the tree that they want removed, a lot of times in 3 seconds or 5 seconds, all right, this tree is going to be this much money. And that gut pricing is really important for a salesperson and a business owner. But sometimes, especially as the business owner moves away from the crew, your gut can go off track. And so looking at the numbers can help you make sure you're being honest with what your expectations are. We've all had this happen where you put a price down, you send the crew out, and then they can't do the job in the time that you thought it would take. And sometimes it's because you saw something they didn't. There was an opportunity to use another tree for rigging or something like that they didn't take advantage of. But it can also be the salesperson's mistake. So if you do the numbers in a computer on the books rather than on a piece of paper, it allows you to make sure that your gut pricing is accurate. So in our company, to do all of our quoting and scheduling and everything, we use Jobber. I love Jobber. It works really well for my company. Some people use QuickBooks. Joist is one of them. Single Ops is another, or Arbor Gold. There's a lot of options out there. And I really think that anyone listening to this call, anyone doing tree work in the United States, really should be using one of these programs rather than using carbon copy paper quotes. There's a charm to handing a piece of paper to a client, and they can walk away with that in their hand and know what the pricing is. But there's also a cost that limits the growth of your company. Any number that you write down there, almost guaranteed, is gut pricing. And if you don't have formulas built in, you start to lose where these numbers are coming from. You know where it is because you're the one making the quote, but there will come a day where you can't write every quote. Sometimes it might be because your company's growing and you've got to hire another salesperson, or it could be that you're sick and your lead climber says, you know what, I'll do it for you. The crew's doing really good. Let me go do it. that person might be a phenomenal tree climber and a phenomenal tree worker, but you're now asking them to do something that's very different, totally different skill set. So when you hand them an empty carbon copy piece of paper, they might not even know where to begin. Or you might be able to tell them, look, our base price is $2,500 a day. At least they've got a starting point. But as your company grows, and especially if you offer more services, the computer, the program can allow you to grow faster. In Jobber, we have line items for cabling. We have 7 different line items for cabling, depending on what size of cable we're doing, and if it's a dynamic cable or a steel cable. So when one of our other 2 salespeople type the word cable, they see all 7 options, and they can click on the one that they want. And the same thing happens for a crane removal. If they type the word crane, in the formula, in the description, it shows a formula that says, here's how much it is per hour for a 50-ton crane, or a 40-ton, or a 100-ton crane. All the prices are in there. And so all they have to do is estimate, what size crane do we think we need? How long do we think it's going to take? What's the travel time for the crane? And they don't have to guess. They don't have to call the green waste dump to ask how much it is to have a container delivered, because it's already on there. I think the best one for this example is doing trunk injections. When we started doing trunk injections in our company 8 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, whenever it was, we were looking for a magical number per inch dBH per chemical that would, we'd measure it out. A 10-inch tree, and we want $5 an inch per phosphajet. All right, this is a $50 tree. But what we figured out is that on big trees we were making money, but on little trees, let's say it's a 10-inch tree, I have a person driving all the way across LA to inject one $50 tree. By the time they show up at the door, I'm already losing money, and they haven't even done any work or used any chemicals yet. So we added a $200 trip charge. Anytime we're doing injecting, the price automatically starts at $200 plus $10 per inch. And then we realized if you do one big tree, we were making money. But if it's 10 little trees, that takes a lot more time pulling the injections out of the tree, remeasuring the chemical, remeasuring the base of the DBH. There's more documentation that we have to do. And so then we refined our formula again. So in Jobber, if you're logged in under my account and you type triage, the formula now shows that it's $200 for the trip, $50 per tree, $10 per inch. Unless it's a pine, then it's $12 per inch DBH, because pines uptake a lot slower, and we were able to calculate about what that comes out to. And so that whole formula is on there. And I have 2 sales guys that sell 1, 2, or 3 days a week on top of what I'm doing 5 days a week. And they don't have to call me and ask how much I think they should charge to inject a 24-inch diameter Canary Island pine. It's in there already. And the same thing happens for almost everything that we do. The final thing that we do, and that the computer allows you to do, is put space for information that you normally wouldn't put on a quote. A really good example is if you're installing a cable. If you think of the time it takes to install a 10-foot long cable versus installing a 40-foot long cable, just looking at the quote, we know that a 40-foot long cable, it's going to use more metal, but it's also going to take more time, so that needs to cost more. So when I force the salespeople to put in the DBH of the trunk that's getting on a tree that's getting removed, when they have to write that down, it helps them to check their numbers. Or for new salespeople, I look at their quotes before they go out. 1 second, Jason. I see your call right there. I'll hit your question in a second. When I force them to call out the numbers, it helps us to know for sure, even though I never saw your tree, if you're bidding $1,200 to remove a 34-inch diameter tree of any kind, in LA, I know you're way underbidding it. So I can talk them through, like, how much time is that going to take? What equipment are you going to need? What kind of damage is that going to do to the property? And how are we going to work around it? And we can come up with a better price. So I'm going to put Jason on. All right,
hello.
Jason, you are live. Yeah, what's your question?
So what's your formula for removals and stuff? I mean, you can't necessarily just go off a DBH. I'm assuming height and then obstacles are, formulated into that somehow. How do you come up with that?
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to put you back
guy.
on. Yep, thank you, Jason. That's a really good question. Okay, so you can't put everything in a formula. Putting these pieces of the formulas in helps, but like you said, if a tree can be 36 inches DBH and only be 50 feet tall. At least in LA, there are trees like that. But that same DBH could be 100 feet tall. So we do have to use our gut and our experience to come up with that pricing a lot of the times. I'll put down sometimes backyard tree, rigging required, long haul out, delicate landscaping that will need to be protected. I'll write all these things down on the line item so the crew can see it in the morning to know what kind of equipment they need to load up. But it also helps me to know, is the price that I'm writing down accurate? And when I see all those things, the description gets longer and longer and longer. It's an uphill haul out, and we have to get permission from the neighbor to use their driveway. All of these things make the price go up. So I can't make a formula for everything, but we use them as much as we can, and it always helps. We've got another question here. I'm going to put it to Mr. Bonner. All right, go ahead, Nick.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this and let you know after listening to all three of these calls how much I appreciated you taking your time out for this unpaid, non-compensated opportunity. It really means a lot that you're spending your time on a weekday, on a weeknight, right, contributing and trying to create what we see as impromptu educational events for arborists. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you helping us spin these events up so fast. You were the first person to do this. We didn't know if the technology was going to work or what. So it's really meaningful to me. It did work. It worked pretty well. So thank you so much for doing it. I really appreciate it.
Of course. That's it. All right. I'm putting you back on mute. All right, guys, if you have any more questions, I just got a couple other little things to say. You press *6 if you want to ask a question, and it doesn't have to be just what we talked about. If you have other pricing-related things, I'll go to you. But I want to say go on Facebook and on TreeStuff.com and put a review on TreeStuff's Facebook and just thank them for creating opportunities for arborists to teach arborists. No one else does it the way that they do it, and it's helpful for everyone. I learned things on Thursday. Hans is doing a call just like this one on marketing your company in a downturned economy, and because of Corona, that's where we are for the moment. And this could be really good information, and TreeStuff is the one bringing that to you. So I think that is all the questions that we have. Use your computers to your advantage. Look at some numbers. experiment with spreadsheets. You don't even have to be good at it at first. Just start doing it, and eventually you'll become experts at knowing what metrics you want to use. And you can use all of this information to keep your company profitable and keep your employees safe while they're up in the trees. And those are the two number one things we're looking for. So thank you guys for listening in. I hope you got something out of this, and go wash your hands.